Hi, my name is Ankit and this video is long overdue. I'm guessing if you clicked on it, you're probably going through a similar situation. And I've been there, I've gone through it. I'm going to share my story with you. And as I had promised myself that if I got through it clear, I would make this video. And so here it is. Roughly 3 years ago, um, I too had an autoimmune disorder which is called Urticaria, and I feel like I'm going to break this up into three parts, which is, of course, I feel like you need to get a little bit of the backstory, which will help you understand it a little better. So back in 2019, I was going through a course for sound engineering, and I was going on to become a sound engineer because of my passion for music. And I was in a place where I had to submit my final project, which would uh, which would decide the fate of my whole career, which had not begun. And at the same time, while I was working on the project, I had gone through a breakup, and at that time, I felt like the world had ended and everyone important to me died. And I used to be up at 4 a.m. wondering why world, why me, just extremely sad. And I would just cater to my senses by eating garbage food. I'm talking instant noodles and wafers and soft drinks and all the sweet biscuits. And so I was not sleeping well, I was not eating well. The little bit that I was awake, I was extremely stressed and depressed, and I was trying to make ends meet to make this project happen. And eventually what happened, one day after I had a very long walk in the sun, I came home and I noticed a little bit of a rash on my arm, which did not go. It stayed and it spread, and over time I understood that this is sunburn. It was a autoimmune disorder, and it made my life worse initially, because I thought, oh great, I'm down in the dumps, as they may say, and now I've got to handle this, and I've got my project to submit. And uh, and yeah, the next 3 months after I understood what happened were very interesting. For when I did understand that I had an autoimmune disorder, and the fact that autoimmune means that it's self-inflicting, I understood that I have to fix my mental health and my physical health, and just doing those two things would I'd be fine. I knew that. So for the physical health, um, I decided to sleep at decent hours. I was no more up till 4 a.m. I used to sleep at decent hours. I would wake up and do a little bit of a light walking and exercising. And I was doing a lot of yoga and meditation, especially empty stomach in the morning. And that helped. That helped just like feel a little more in sync with just the sun. It felt it felt good, especially for someone who was up till 4 a.m. and then waking up with red eyes and going, okay, let's start the day. That felt good. And of course, the most important thing I did for my physical health was change the way I eat and the food, and that laid the most important foundational ground for everything else that took place and was built upon it. Being the way I've been brought up, if I've ever been unwell, the first thing we've changed is food. And it's always something that I'm eating wrong. So I went through the first 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks of going through, okay, let's cut out dairy. Maybe dairy food is making me feel that way. Let's cut out some heavy foods, the heavy protein foods. Let's maybe not eat bread for a while. Let's try not eating, the histamine foods, try an antihistamine diet. Just going through a lot of things. And what I noticed in that phase was when I would eat heavy foods, I'm in India, so we eat dal a lot. I would tend to get more rashes right after the meal, whereas certain foods would not. And so I kind of like polished that up a little bit. And as I was polishing that, I kind of got done with my course, and I was asked to sit at home for like 1.5 months, after which, in some magical manner, I managed to get a job. So all I had to do was sit at home and wait until that job would start. So by the time I polished my food, it's a bit odd. I wouldn't say that anyone should do this, but this is what worked for me. I eventually came down to eating just like three foods, which was bread, boiled potatoes, and cooked curd rice. Not even much salt, no salt almost. Because when I would eat these foods, I wouldn't flare up. I was still good. Whereas anything else, of course, biscuits, all of that off the charts, just normal healthy vegetables also would have a reaction. And I was doing all this without any medication to really see how my body was feeling. So I came down to those three handful of foods, and I think I held on to them for about the same 1.5 months. And that's all I ate. I was at home, and that's all I ate day and night with water. Now, in terms of mental health, I had a lot going on here. And I knew food would lay like the foundation for me. I knew I needed that, but this was a different thing. And I had never gone through something so extreme in my life. So I decided, as the extremist as I am sometimes, to just sit with my problems and face them hard on. Even when I broke up initially, I said I'm not gonna resort to smoking or drinking or running away from this. I'm just gonna stay with it. And I stayed with it even without any more distractions at all. I didn't watch any movies, any YouTube, anything. No reading, no recreation. Just after my morning routine, I would just sit on the sofa. That's it. I would just sit and stare at a wall, and I would let my mind do its thing. And it was healthy because I don't think I could explain everything that my mind went through sitting there and what happened when I used to meditate. I don't even want to get into calling it meditation, but it was magical. I used to shut my eyes, and if I ever had hives that were turned up, when I would open them, they would be gone. There was just like a faintest mark. It wasn't as itchy anymore. And I did that like a crazy man. I just sat home. No, nothing. I just sat in my brain, and I sat with these three foods, and I sat at home. And I did what my body needed to feel healthy, to get back to normalcy. And I realized in that process what I was doing is I was learning to manage my stress. It's not that stress didn't exist, it's that I was learning to understand that this is not the worst thing in my life. That my perspective is warped on things, and there's stress literally flowing through me, which is creating the situation. And that's where that idea of just fixing my mental and physical health is something I really held on to. And I knew I would be fine. And I just went all in. I remember at a certain point of time, I was so stressed that am I just going to eat three foods my whole life? I had to accept this as my reality and come to peace with it. And this is after having traveled also and experienced the world and drank the wine and the foods and saying, "Oh, this is all," right? And I did have to step out a couple times. The only medication I was taking was an antihistamine pills at times, so that if there were any flare-ups on my face, you don't want to be in public with that. And I would take that pill sometimes, but I didn't want to depend on that pill. I didn't want to live a life dependent on the pill. I don't think anyone should live a life dependent on any pill at any given point of time. Regardless, I sat and just doing this exercise of being with myself, facing everything that was going on within, and eating light and sleeping well and just catering to myself worked wonders. For very poetically, the day I joined my first job, I was cured. I remember 20 days prior to it, I used to take like an antihistamine to step outside, and its effect would last, say, 4 hours. Then I would take the next one, and it would last 8, 10 hours. Eventually got to a point where I would need it for 3, 4 days, and then to a point where I didn't need it anymore. I was good. I was not having the reactions anymore, and I did it all by myself, and in the sense that this was something I just put myself through. It wasn't a cure out there. I did go on the internet and I read a bunch of stories, and I heard stories from people getting onto steroids and it's not healing them, to people just figuring out what's wrong in their diet, merely changing that and going on a fruit cleanse for like a month and healing themselves. So there are multitude of stories, but I think one of the main stories that stuck out to me was of this man who had urticaria and had a child. And the moment he had a child, he said that it was gone because he had a different sense of responsibility. He was no more longer living for himself. He had a child. And so that's when I understand there's something else on here. I can also feel like I have a bigger responsibility and get up. Right? Something in my perspective in my mind has to change. I am making myself sick. It's autoimmune. Right? What's wrong with my body? I've eaten these foods my whole life and nothing's happened. And so eventually I went out. I remember I went out for a family party, and I eventually said, just give me a piece of pizza, and I ate it and nothing happened. And I was like, yeah, of course nothing's gonna happen. And yeah, I found my way out, and it was a scary time. Of course, I've cried a lot of tears. I've had some extremely interesting meditations. I want to call it a meditation also. It was just me shutting up and sitting down, and I experienced a lot that I cannot put into words. But yeah, it was a thoroughly. I don't think I was the same person I was when I initially got it. I feel like I've shed a layer of skin, and life for that matter has never been the same within me. Something just clicked, and I couldn't have done it without the support of my family and my friends and just everyone around me. I remember my friends used to still call me up and say, come over, we'll just boil potatoes for you, you can still hang out. And of course, how much my family has helped me, it's amazing. So I just hope that my story helps someone out there who's going through something similar. You can obviously reach out to me if you'd like to talk. I think different people get it for different reasons. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's the environment, sometimes it's something you've been carrying around you for a long time. I'm just saying you're not alone. A lot of people have been here, a lot of people have gone through it. It's scary, it's horrible, but you'll get through it. And yeah, and I hope I can explain more parts of it in depth for you further here. And yeah, I hope there was some sense to my blabber. And I wish you a good life. Thank you.